Good morning. This recording is to start the causes of World War One and actually some of the major battles of World War One. The first thing we'll do is we'll actually look at the causes. We have actually talked about pretty much all of these causes in our History 102 or 109 classes. In terms of imperialism, this goes all the way back to the start of the colonization, the colonialism that started in the 13 and 1400s. By the time you get to 1900, there's no real territory to take, so the imperialists are starting to fight each other over territory. For example, France and Germany almost went to war over Morocco on 3 separate occasions. The second cause is nationalism. Nationalism is a topic we've already covered in class. It's known as this unique cultural identity that creates pride. Now, if you are one of those groups of people that have been conquered or are ruled by European powers, odds are you are probably not going to like it. And because you're not going to like it, you're going to rebel. And all that's going to do is it's going to make tensions even at a higher pitch. Typically, the area that's most regional, that's most discussed with World War One, is the area around the Balkans, Bosnia, Serbia, and of course Austria trying to cement its control of Bosnia. Number 3 and number 4 are related. Number 3 is militarism. And number 4 is the role of the press. Militarism is typically listed because of the building of the gigantic armies and navies that were done before World War One. However, this in itself is not really a cause of World War One. What is a cause and what makes militarism a cause is the role of the press, or what's sometimes known as the crisis of the press. The press definitely reminded the people of who the enemy was. And the press on normal occasions was bribed by one group or another. This was known as, in the United States, this was the period of yellow journalism. So there was a major lack of honesty. The free press was virtually non-existent, and different political segments had their own newspapers, all a part of Europe. And of course, this brings in editorials, salacious headlines and salacious stories, and all this does is continue to cause the tensions and to cause the problems to increase at a fever pitch. Then number 5 is aggressive alliances. Aggressive alliances is an alliance that states that if you go to war and I am your ally, I will go to war too. A traditional alliance is if you go to war, then I will watch your back, I will offer supplies, I will try to help you, but typically there's no guarantee of going to war. But these alliance systems were all about once war is declared, we're all going to jump in, it's for that reason why I don't really discuss who declared war first, second, third, fourth, fifth, because it really doesn't matter, because once war was declared the very, very first time, then, everybody else is going to jump in. Now, there are 2 sides, the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Turks, and then the Triple Entente, that is the French, the Russians, the British, and later the United States. Now, one of the key notes, or very key components of this, is that Britain and France are traditionally enemies. So, Britain also had a treaty with Germany. And the treaty with France really didn't come about until after Germany industrialized, because Britain is always trying to play both sides of the table, so to speak. They are really looking out for Britain and concerned about Britain. So therefore, it was not uncommon for them to have alliances. And when World War I first started, no one knew which alliance that Britain was going to go with, that they were going to honor. And it wasn't until Germany invaded Belgium that Britain finally broke the alliance with the Germans. Number 6 is international rivalries. We've already talked about this. We talked about it in class in terms of the Franco-Prussian War. The main rivalry that pushes World War I is between France and Germany. Then number 7 and number 8 is the summer of 1914, which has the assassination of the Archduke and the crisis of leadership. This is a major problem. The Archduke went to Bosnia where he knew that he was hated. He had a parade. He was trying to show a form of strong future leadership. While he was in the parade, a grenade was hurled. It bounced off the car. And as it bounced off the car, one of the other cars is blown up. He continues to the presentation of the speech that he was going to. And after that event, his driver makes a wrong turn, crosses some railroad tracks, and is stopped by a herd of pigs in the middle of the road. And as he starts to back up, a member of the Black Hand, the Serbian Black Hand, Gavio Princeps, comes up, shoots the Archduke and his wife in the back of the car. And there's no real attempt at peace. There is just an attempt for war. That's what we want. We want war. So it is very much a crisis of leadership. As you read in your text, there's a situation with the blank check that Germany gives Austria-Hungary to try to avenge the loss of their next king. But all that is in your book. Before we get to the plans, please be aware that this is regarded as the last popular war. It's a lot of nationalism, and you see right here that the thought was that the war would be over in less than 6 months. There were actually common statements such as, "I will be home before Christmas." And what they did not consider is the last aspects of the U.S. Civil War, the Peninsula Campaign, where Grant is chasing Lee, and Lee is actually trying to fortify and to build trenches, and you get one long continuous front. And this is going to lead to a lot of death. It's going to lead to a lot of destruction. But they didn't study the U.S. Civil War, which is a precursor to modern industrial warfare. But they didn't study that one. They only thought about European wars. There was a lot of parades as a joyous times. The problem is they're fighting with old tactics, the Adolphus military revolution that we discussed in the first part of the class. And there's new weapons such as the machine gun, the tank, the flamethrower, and all these other things are going to cause major, major problems. Now, the battle plans. You see that the German plan is the von Schlieffen plan, and the French plan is Plan XVII, or Plan 17. Here is what it looks like. This is the von Schlieffen plan. Notice the hooks. This is a plan that was devised in the late 1800s for Germany to fight a two-front war to quickly defeat France. This is all based on speed. And then they could turn their attention to the Russians, who they thought would be the true biggest enemy. This is based on speed. There is no backup plan. I compare it to this. If I were to throw down $1 million in cash on the floor, odds are you would probably jump down on the ground and scoop as much money into you as fast as you could to try to get the absolute most money possible. Well, that's what this is aimed at. Now, this plan does not take into consideration that if the Belgians actually fight, It doesn't take into consideration that if the British come over and help. It doesn't take into consideration if the Russians attack. By the way, all three of those happen, and the von Schlieffen plan fails. Well, what's their backup plan? They don't have one. Now, the French plan is Plan XVII. Now, it's not actually on this map, but if you watch the mouse, it would be attacking in this region right here. This is where the French want to attack. This is the region of Alsace-Lorraine. And France's plan is to quickly, by the way, they know the Germans are coming over here. They know they're coming. The plan is to quickly attack Alsace-Lorraine, to gain the territory back, and to sue for peace before the Germans ever get to Paris. That is their plan. By the way, the Germans know that that is the French's plan. So there's no real surprises here, and because of that, both plans are going to fail. They are poorly executed. Absolutely, teetotally poorly executed. The first battle of World War I is known as the Battle of the Frontiers. The Battle of the Frontiers is going to take place in this region, in this area of Belgium, right in here, into France. This is the area, okay? This, of course, is during the, with the French commander, General Joffre, who never panics because he didn't know he should have panicked. My mentor, Dr. Thacker, used to say that Joffre saved France through his incompetence. So needless to say, the Germans are coming, and the French are leaving a small force over here to stop the Germans because their attention is over here. That's where the major army is. Needless to say, in a matter of 4 days, the French are going to lose 300,000 casualties. Now, please be aware when we say casualties, that includes killed, wounded, and missing. Okay? If we're talking about deaths, we actually use the word death. So casualties, killed, wounded, and missing. And odds are in World War I, if you were missing, you were dead. And needless to say, the French have to fall back. And they're going to fall back to this area right here, known as the Marne River, which is not very far from Paris. And at this point, Joffre tries to throw everything he has at the Germans. And there's approximately 1 million men on both sides. And this battle is just going to last for a matter of days until it becomes a stalemate because the British are going to arrive. And when the British arrive, all of a sudden, the Germans are now having to fight an opponent that they were not expecting, and their advances stop. Along with that, the Russians are going to launch an attack over at Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes. So what do you try to do when you have a stalemate? What do you try to do when you are hunkered down in a trench and you have tried to charge your enemy's trench and you keep getting mowed down? Well, what do you do? Well, the result is what we commonly known as the race to the sea, which is also known as the First Battle of Ypres, or as they say in French, Ypres. Ypres is Y-P-R-E-S. Okay? And the plan is both sides are trying to make an attempt to dig trenches to the English Channel. This area up here, this is the English Channel. You see the Strait of Dover, because Dover, England is right there. They're digging these trenches, and the plan is to try to get around, to use the water to get around the enemy's lines. And everybody is doing this. Both sides are doing this. And needless to say, the old British Army, the fabled British Army, is going to die on this battlefield. And they're going to dig trenches. Now, please understand, there's approximately 20 miles wide a battlefield, okay? So we're looking at this region right here, all the way down, and they're going to build trenches all the way from the English Channel all the way down to the Swiss Alps. This is the start of trench warfare, and they're going to fight all of World War I trying to figure out how to find a way to overcome trench warfare. There are some, the only battles in the East that I talk about, I'll go back to the slide to where you can see some names. The only battles in the East that we mentioned, I put it right here so you could actually read it, the battles of Masurian Lakes and Tannenbergs. Needless to say, the Germans attack, and the Germans squash them like a bug. Of course, Paul Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff will be national heroes because of this, and they will both play a role later on with the rise of Hitler and Hitler's popularity soaring. But anyway, after the Germans are defeated, they are going to have to retreat all the way back to the Carpathian Mountains. And if you don't know where the Carpathian Mountains are, that's where Dracula is from. Okay? So they are just absolutely squashed. Then we have the Second Battle of Ypres, or Ypres, Y-P-R-E-S. This is where the Germans are going to use poisonous gas effectively for the first time, and it will be chlorine gas. The wind has to be just right. They have to have the high ground, but the German gas masks were not as good. In fact, nobody's gas masks were good. And, of course, if the wind shifts, which it did, the Germans are in trouble. Now, let's step back for a second. Why in the world do they use gas, poison gas? And if you don't know, the British, the Germans, and the French all used poisonous gas in World War I. And they're using poisonous gas not because they're absolutely evil human beings, but because they're trying to find a way to do as much damage to the enemy as possible with doing as little damage to their enemy or their soldiers as possible. But every time poisonous gas was used, whether it was chlorine or mustard gas or whatever, it always failed. You have the Second Battle of Champagne, where the French are going to gain their military general who is willing to fight. His name is Marshal Pétain, P-E-T-A-I-N, and he was determined to fight the Germans, which of course will lead to his major fame and a lot of folklore that is going to be associated with this name. And then there is the Gallipoli campaign, and this is going to be the last one we're going to speak about on the recording, and then we'll pick back up with the others in class. Gallipoli is regarded as the most controversial campaign of World War I, and it is the brainchild of Winston Churchill, which it turns out to be an absolute total disaster and almost ruined Churchill's career. Gallipoli is spelled G-A-L-L-I-P-O-L-I. Gallipoli is in the Straits of the Dardanelles and is very close to the old Christian city of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, Turkey. This is the British versus the Turks. And this is an example of the British trying to gain territory. Now, Gallipoli is a land battle and a naval battle at the same time. Needless to say, the only thing that saved the British from disaster was the fact that the Turks' guns were not very good. They overheated very easily, and they were not very accurate in terms of shooting. But needless to say, the British are still going to have over 141,000 casualties in this Sidewater campaign of World War I. And everything goes wrong. They land troops in the wrong places. They land reinforcements in the wrong places. They land supplies in the wrong places. Everything goes in the wrong places. And luckily for the United States later in World War II, Churchill's career was not ruined, because if it was, World War II might have been just a tad bit different. When we get back into class, we will start with the Battle of Verdun, which is the next major battle. We will cover the big three, and we will finish things up and start getting ready for the midterm.